Thank you very much, Olu. I'm being joined in the studio now by the chairman of the Nigerian branch of the Institute of Hospitality in the United Kingdom, Mr. Adesugba. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
It looks like it's, in spite of the fact that in Lagos, the commercial capital of the country, from last week, you were allowed to, your association and operators in that sector were allowed to do in-service dining now, even though at reduced capacity.
Exactly.
It doesn't seem to have made much of a difference. Not yet, anyway.
Well, most certainly not yet. We're trying to get the customers and the users to come back. Of course, there's some bit of apprehension regarding COVID-19, particularly from the middle-income earners, who, of course, are much more informed regarding the issue of COVID-19 and its effects. So it's still yet trickling in. They're coming in, and we just want to be sure that we assure our customers that they're going to be safe when they do come. Absolutely.
One of the things that seemed to stand out for me in Olu's reporting there about what has happened so far is that virtually everybody seems to be talking about some kind of incentive, some kind of help to get the businesses that have been shut largely over the last couple of months back on their feet. Yeah. And yet we hear that government has made just such incentives available. Would you be aware of any of those for your sector?
Oh, yes, most certainly. Of course, it's going to be a process. It's not just going to be immediate. And then we have to capture those that are really affected. The federal government, Ministry of Information and Culture, they have an incentive for the workers, which we're already working on. We're putting together a list of our workers that have been much more affected, most of them on the lower rung. Right. And we're just about to start that process, as it were. And it's going to go directly to them. It's not coming
through the owners or anything like that?
Absolutely. It's going directly to them. And, of course, Lagos State just recently talked about a 1 billion naira palliative. And that, again, is in the process. Pretty soon, in about 2 or 3 days, we're going to have an online form of registration. And, of course, the checks will be put through. And I believe it will be disbursed. Then, of course, there's the Smedan initiative from the CBN, right, which I really commend for. That actually is for micro, small, and medium enterprises. And that has a structure, and it's quite commendable. It's an assisted loan. So the issue of those that receive the loan absconding doesn't arise. So
let's take a quick break. When we come back, because I'd like to ask you what you think are the chances of this sector going forward. It was a very vibrant sector, but absolutely, all the economic indices seem to be like swimming against the tide at this point. Absolutely. But that will be after the break. Please stay on with us. Thanks for staying tuned. Welcome back. Mr. Adesugba, the chairman of the Institute of Hospitality in the United Kingdom, Nigeria branch, is still with us in the studio, and we're discussing the issue of the new normal with restaurants, eateries, and the question of in-house dining. Before the break, I said I was going to ask you about where things stand now going forward. Let's assume everything that we've talked about, SMEDAN, the CBN, the other funds that are coming as some kind of palliative for the industry come to pass. You will still be swimming against the tide going forward economically, because it does appear as if what COVID brought was like a double whammy.
Absolutely.
Some other things were already happening before that happened.
Most definitely.
Can you enlighten us a little bit about that?
Well, I'll say that by the time we turned into 2017, we were looking at, some recession, and the industry, the QSRs, the quick service restaurants, they began to struggle, certainly. And what they began to experience was a drop in sales, relatively. And they had, it's a very complex industry. And of course, there are a lot of reasons that happened, that had to do with that drop in sales.
Right.
Then, of course, we have a very unregulated industry. There are no barriers to entry. And so competition from various subsectors of industry also created that that fall in sales and things like that. However, when COVID-19 came on, of course, there was that impact, that very much negative impact. What we're looking at going forward, actually, is I'm looking at about between 3 and 5 years.
For recovery?
Absolutely.
That's a long time.
It sure is. It sure is. It will, because when you're talking about backward integration in itself,
right.
What you see is that, yes, there's activity in the agricultural sector, basically, but we're talking of moving, things like moving products to the market,
right.
things like having the financial capacity to buy, especially amongst the smaller players in the industry. Of course, the bigger players now may begin to look at credit facilities, which we know astronomically, traditionally, interest rates are pretty high.
Right.
We're not talking of cash cows anymore. Cash has relatively slowed down because, again, sales are down. So we're going to be looking at, I must confess to you, 3 to 5 years.
And on top of all of this, you still have the added costs of complying with the COVID-19 protocols themselves, the additional purchases of PPEs for your staff, face masks, cleaning and re-cleaning, disinfecting premises, which you may not be able to pass on to the customer.
It's going to be difficult passing on to a clientele that already the spending power is rather low. But the truth is that we have to put the protocols in place. There has to be compliance. As a matter of fact, right now, we're Standard Organizations of Nigeria, we've had several meetings. We just went through the technical committee just put together the standards for the industry that's now going to cut across the country. One of the things that has already been, determined by that committee, the technical committee, is the issue of compliance, because we usually have issues with compliance here in Nigeria. But this time around, there's this will to see that everybody complies. And of course, with the Safety Commission here in Lagos, that everybody complies with all the protocols that has to do with keeping the customer safe.
I just have about a minute to ask you this, and that is to say that going forward then, after my discussion with you, I'm going to be talking to a medical expert about this.
Okay.
But going forward, do you think that with everything we've talked about so far, even though you've already mentioned 3 to 5 years,
yes,
within those 3 to 5 years, the vast majority of the players in the industry will survive?
That's tough, absolutely tough. It's a very resilient subsector of the economy, I must say that, because everybody has to eat, fundamentally. But talking about the vast majority surviving, we're going to just be begging it. Basically, maybe we'll be talking about maybe half of the industry, absolutely, yes. We're talking low quality, very complex industry. We're talking food safety and a whole lot of stuff that's coming. We're talking of, skills, training, and government regulations are there to deal with. The taxes that we need to deal with. So there's
quite a lot to deal with. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Adesugba, for coming in.
Thank you so much.
One can only wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us.